Hello and welcome to another edition of Press Row on Rivalry Family Media. I'm Todd Robbins. Happy to have you along with us and happy today to be joined here on Press Row by Athletic Director of Leominster Public Schools, Dave Palazzi. Coach, great to have you here with us on another edition of Press Row in what has been an awfully odd time, I would say, educationally and athletically, as we're all dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic shutdown of education and in part athletics as well. And it's kind of left us reeling from what would be our normal routine. Today, you probably would have been off and on the phone 10 times. You had snow. Now we've got a little bit of sun out there. Maybe a game would have happened. Maybe it wouldn't have. But it might have made for a very difficult day in the athletic office under normal circumstances.
Sure. Yeah. Things are much different, obviously. Not really watching the weather anymore for canceling games, but I surely wish I was. I do miss it. I miss going out to the games, and hopefully we can get on track and get these kids playing ball again. I'm sure they're missing the time in the practice field with their friends and their coaches, and I'm pretty positive. Hopefully we're going to get back at it.
You all, as a group of athletic directors, do a great job on social media, posting pictures of all the meetings you guys have been having. You've been hopping on and off, both local meetings within the Midwatch, and then there's the statewide meetings, as people are trying to, again, keep that glimmer of hope that athletics may be moving forward. I know you guys had a phone call this week as a group of athletic directors. What came out of that conversation this week in the Midwatch?
We're all pretty positive. We want to hope for the best. I mean, the governor, we're pretty much in line with what the governor is asking the state to do as far as the MIAA. They're in line with the governor. So they currently have the start date as March 4th. So in essence, March 4th would be like the third Monday in March. May 4th would be like the third Monday in March. So we'd have a 3-day tryout period for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the first contest could take place on a week from that Monday, which would be May 11th. So it's kind of a shortened preseason, but hopefully, these student athletes, I mean, get at home, be safe, try to work out. I mean, you could do many things at home and just try to do what you can for the situation you have to try to stay in somewhat of semblance of shape, I guess, to put it that way.
And I want to dig a little deeper on that in a moment or two as well. As you all were kind of talking as a mid-watch league and obviously looking and kind of reading the tea leaves with what you all have been seeing and hearing, what is the likelihood that May 4th seems like it will be possible to reopen education, reopen athletics, and return to some form of normalcy?
Yeah, I mean, I want to remain positive. I mean, but there's also a realistic view of things. Losing track, I think it's April 16th, so we have a few more weeks anyway. But we'll see how this goes in Massachusetts. The third highest state with coronavirus cases, I guess, third or fourth, somewhere up there. But I think everybody, our administration, our school district, people all around the Commonwealth have just done a great job in doing what the governor has said to try to do. And we're, as athletic directors, we kind of got to be leaders of our schools and our athletics. And I'm always looking for the positive in things and in negative environments. I want to be the light in darkness. I want to make things right. So that positive thinking and just envisioning our student athletes playing all these athletic contests in May and June and these seniors getting back at it. I mean, those are the visions I like to see. And that's the way I look at it, and hopefully it will work out for the best.
Things being so open-ended, of course, at this point in time, you all are kind of having to look at, differing options and choices, and obviously how many moving pieces you can get in shape. And although it seems like for the moment, there's been a lot of time, it will be a very short window once eventually, the reopening is approved, should it be, approved to begin on schedule for May 4th. As you all are talking about priorities, how much is there that has to be done between now and then in order to get things off the ground for May 4th?
Well, I think the scheduling is going to be pretty easy. I mean, for everybody that's wondering, we'll probably stick, or not probably, but we will stick just to a league schedule with a minimum of 8 games being played and a maximum of 12. As far as the JV and freshman games, we'll try to schedule as many of those games as possible, 8 and 12 being the number. And just try to do what we can to schedule all those contests. So, obviously there's different sports and tennis and volleyball where you have a different number of teams within each league. So you may get more or less contests in lacrosse. So, I think all of the schedulers, the athletic directors that do the scheduling, they have all that mapped out. It's in a package. It's ready to go. I mean, we're ready to go. All the athletic directors, we've had 3, 4, 5 meetings talking about every which way you can about different things we can do. So we're pretty organized, and we're just waiting for the go ahead to kind of move this thing forward with our schedule and everything, and kind of guide our coaches and our student athletes.
I know you, like I, love a good horse racing analogy. It's like putting the horses in the starting gate and then never opening the doors, which is kind of how it has felt for a severe number of weeks as we've gone through, obviously, this time period. Should, of course, the worst case scenario happen, which would be the governor come back, in the next couple of days and say, we're going to shift this to January 1st. January. I just did what you did. Let's try June 1st instead. We're going to move this to June 1st in this process. Is there any possibility with the items that have to happen before competition can begin, a tryout and other items, should June be that starting date to return to school? Could a meaningful season happen under that tight a timetable?
Yeah, I don't know there, June 1st, but I like to stick with the May 4th. I mean, things are changing, and you're right. I mean, you don't want to start organizing. You want to be ready and plan, obviously, but you don't want to do all this work until you really know. But June 1st. I mean, now you're pushing upon school districts' budgets ending June 30th, and July 1st is a new budgetary year. And can you play over the summer? I mean, now you're talking the legalities of budgets and state budgets and how that works and how the money's allocated towards school districts and things. So, that's a whole nother issue that we did bring up a little bit, but then we reverted back what you initially said when you asked the question to me. You don't want to put the cart before the horse, because then you get into, a number of issues. So I guess hopefully the governor and the MIAA, that they're working on some of these things, but I can assure you, we got some pretty bright athletic directors that have been around for a while, and we've kind of been, a lot of our Central Mass athletic directors work on the tournament committee, and they work with the MIAA directly. So they've been pretty outspoken and contributing to the thought process of the MIAA. So, we'll see how it turns out.
I spoke to one of your coaches, lacrosse coach Colin Davis, and he said he'd be willing to coach in June, July, August, anything to have one more season with these kids. Speak to, obviously, the type of coaches that you all have, and that I think a lot of coaches feel that way at this point in time at a lot of different schools. Anything. They are willing to do anything they can in order to get one more season for these kids, because, of course, we were all thrust into this scenario through no fault of anybody other than some bad luck with an invisible enemy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Again, I want to see these kids play. I mean, I don't want to start predicting things if May 4th doesn't happen. But, I'll just say this. You have summer leagues for basketball. You have Legion for baseball. You have all these summer camps, and you have everything going on in the summer. And, I'm ready to work in the summer. I'll have a season in the summer if we had to. I don't even know. Again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. That's my own personal opinion. We have great coaches. I want to see these seniors play, these juniors, sophomores, freshmen, first time being a Blue Devil. Maybe this is their first sport in the spring. I mean, I've gone through all these things in my mind. I just, a summer schedule logistically running up into the fall, I don't know how that would work. Again, all the monies for busing and paying officials, the school fiscal year ends June 30th. How would that, legally, how would the money be spent on all of those things? So there's a lot of things in there, but, I can tell you this, and I can promise you that this is, if the season does get canceled for some reason and a date's given that may work out in the summer, I'm going to do everything I can to, make it happen. And, I'm a believer. If people say, well, the kids won't play in the summer, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think every single student athlete would want to play, would try the best they can. But, I'm kind of getting way ahead of myself. But that's just my own thoughts and trying to, you know, swing for the fences and fight to the last breath to get this thing going. And that's really what I'm going to try to do.
And at one time or another, I think you point to something that I do believe wholeheartedly exists. And perhaps if maybe as a society we started to see that slip, particularly in our students, the appreciation for public education and athletics that are run under public education. I think right now, having been deprived of it and losing some of that normalcy, I think we're all going to find just how much we appreciate those routines and the things that are normal once we're able to go back to that normalcy. That right now, sitting here, anybody would give anything to go back to their normal routine.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, Todd, because by no, I mean, people are losing their lives. Let's not lose, sight of that. I mean, we just, I'm here. I want to get kids back to normal. I want to get kids playing. I mean, we're talking about adolescence here. We're talking about, social emotional growth. There's a lot of people out there that are doing the best they can to exercise, but athletics is a tremendous outlet for people, for kids. It's a tremendous environment to learn a lot of different things about yourself, who you are, team, make you stronger, all of those things. And, I think when we look back, if this doesn't happen, the impact of that, we'll see how much it will be. But I'm a firm believer that just getting people together and being able to play as a team does more for a kid and their development, both physically, mentally, socially, emotionally. All of those things are important. If we can't do that, then I'm sure we'll figure out another way to do that.
I want to tap into some of your expertise. You're, of course, a former health educator. You've been a coach. You've been a player. You've seen a lot of different angles around this personally in your own experience, and you yourself are a parent today. As you sit there and you think about, your experience and what we've gone through, at the other side of this, whenever we get to the other side of this, can public education and public education-based athletics, can they return to a normal we knew before, March 12th? Or has things reached a point, have we learned things about public health that maybe are going to restrict and cause some of these social distancing things to become a more normal part of our society that maybe we're all ready to let enter our normal everyday lexicon?
Yeah, we're so adaptable. I mean, we really are as Americans. We adapt to a lot of different things and the changing environment. I mean, I look at technology and teachers. I mean, there's a lot of teachers out there that were very minimal with technology. Some more than others, introducing technology into their classroom. Myself, you, just using all the technology now and learning all these things because we have to. So I think we're a very resilient country, and when we have to do things, we've always won and we've always come out on top. From a Stripes movie, we were 10-1 in wars, I guess he said jokingly. But we're a resilient bunch of people, and I think that when we come out of this, we're going to be stronger for it, and we'll figure out a way to maneuver in between each other and go back to doing the things that we love to do. Maybe not the same way, but I think a lot of changes maybe for the better. Who knows? I mean, that's just still for history to decide, I guess.
I have tried to imagine what my classroom might look like if I was to walk in and see 15 to 20 students all wearing masks around me, and myself included. I don't know that is ever going to not seem bizarre, even if it becomes the norm for a period of time.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I mean, it may happen. I mean, but you never know. I mean, I wasn't too keen on wearing a mask, and I'm sure people weren't comfortable with it up until now. Now people are making masks, and I'm not going to say they're comfortable wearing in them, but they are wearing them. So we do a good job adapting and doing what we're supposed to do to be safe, and hopefully most of us will do the right thing and we'll work our way out of this with a little bit of pride and get moving on with our lives.
You talked about a little while ago, kind of players that are right now displaced and not able to continue their education and their athletics at this point in time, trying to stay ready in some point in time. If you were to make a suggestion, how is that possible in a socially distant world? Because sports in and of themselves, they're a family and a camaraderie-based sport, male, female, or otherwise. It's all about building that family and building that team. Be it that, of course, society now for personal safety is forcing all of us apart. How can you kind of build that? How can you train and build some of those same relationships when we're forced to be socially distant?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these kids can reach out to their coaches. I think the MIAA just changed the rules. So, I sent out an email to all my coaches. They can now contact the kids. The out of season rules are kind of, they voted against that. So, voted to disband that. So, the kids can reach out to coaches. They can reach out to myself. Obviously, do the best you can to eat the right foods and drink a lot of water. And if you can get outside, if you have an area, a yard, or just a place you might be able to just go and just do, I mean, push-ups, sit-ups in your house, a lot of things that coaches have sent out. And, again, everybody's in a different circumstance, and it's hard to have equity in this whole situation because, we talked about it before we came on. Everybody has a different home life situation, and a lot of these kids look to get out onto the field just to get out of, a place that maybe not have a huge backyard to play in or something like that. But there's always something you can do and make the best of your situation. That's kind of the message I want to give. And just, you can always do push-ups. Believe me. I mean, I'm supposed to have a dance off with my two daughters later, and my wife and I don't have time to plan for it. So my youngest said they're going to win. So I gotta move my hips a little later. So that's going to be my exercise, I guess.
I like your chances, Coach. You always seem to rise to the occasion. I like your chances.
Yeah, well,
As we think about the spring 2020 season that may or may not be, obviously, it's an opportunity for us to at least talk about some of these athletes. Leominster was poised to have some great changes coming this spring, new softball coach coming on board, and a lot of other things. I want to give you an opportunity to highlight a little bit of what you were hoping to see and what we are still hoping to see as the month progresses with spring 2020 athletics in Leominster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out. I was looking forward to all our programs. Our new softball coach Tara Whitskell, she was very excited. Our girls lacrosse coach Ken Obershawn, he was ready to go. They did a lot of work in the off season, getting the kids ready, and all my other coaches. I was able to get a program huddle that I'm sure you're very familiar with football. We have it for all the teams, lacrosse, tennis, anybody could use that program, and they've really been kind of looking into it in the off season and getting ready for that. But I was pretty excited for those, the newer coaches and the seniors coming back, and just to see what we could do. So hopefully we'll still get there, and I know we'll be ready. I have a bunch of great coaches that are chomping at the bit, ready to go, and they've done a great job just managing their kids and doing, what they can to support the student athletes moving forward.
You mentioned those seniors, and for some of them, should the worst transpire, they may have walked off the athletic fields in Leominster for the last time as a spring athlete 1 year ago and have never realized that was the possibility. If you were to kind of pass a message along to those seniors and talk a little bit about what they've meant to Blue Devil athletics over their 4 years.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I have so much respect for these senior athletes. I mean, particularly the three sports stars or the three sport athletes that just work hard. I mean, it's a different situation for them. It's obviously something that this country has never seen. But you play athletics, and the most important thing that I've said to kids playing, it's not about the wins and losses. It's not about the trophies. It's not about the all-star team. It's about creating memories and friendships with your teammates and learning those lessons that are going to carry you through times like this. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is not a football quote. It's actually from Lou Piniella. He's not yet comfortable being uncomfortable. He said that about his relief pitcher. And they said, "Hey, how's this guy doing? What are your thoughts on him?" And he said, well, he's not yet comfortable with being uncomfortable, meaning he's not able to withstand those moments of stress. So it's a little extreme. I know it's a sports analogy. I mean, there's a lot of people right now that are under a lot of stress, and there's a lot of things that get taught in athletics when stressful games, things you can do, visualize, be positive, take deep breaths, get some rest, eat the right foods, offer up your services to something else, be nice to others so you're feeling good about what you're doing. So with that said, I know at least a lot of the seniors that I have coached in girls basketball or football, I would hope they would do that at this time and just look at how they can help other people. I mean, it is what it is. We're in our situation. There's nothing we can do about it. Stay positive, be positive, look forward to the days ahead of you. And you know what? Maybe something great's going to come out of this. You may be a better person for something like this. We don't know. But I like to think that this situation is going to make me a better person. It's going to make me better with others. And I'm going to try to look at it that way. And that's really my only approach at this point. I don't want to get negative and start talking about everything that has happened or didn't happen. But it is what it is, the old saying. You got to be positive and you got to be the leading light in the situation. So I hope, and I know those seniors will. And you know, I said it to you the other day, the Bob Dylan song, I get, you know, the first one will be, you know, will be first and later be last. I mean, is the times are changing song. And, you know, you look at that, it was a different situation, but, you know, it is true. Things are going to change, but, you know, you can be, these seniors can be the leaders someday and use this as a positive. I mean, that would be my message.
A net positive to take away from this experience. Let's turn our attention, Coach, a little bit to your Leominster athletic program. You've now had a couple of years on the job as athletic director, get a chance to obviously get a good kind of stand, a lay of the land, if you will, get comfortable in the office. I know you've surrounded yourself with a lot of whiteboards with a lot of items on there that you want to get to. And I want to have an opportunity to talk about a few of those things today. If you were to talk about, obviously, outside of all of this, pandemic aside and everything else, if you were to describe what a Leominster Blue Devil athlete is, or what is a Leominster Blue Devil, how would you describe that today?
I would just say, you know, they have great coaching. Our coaching are going to utilize video to make them better. I think implementing our huddle package, which allows all of our coaches to videotape the kids. I think they're going to be knowledgeable about the sport. Our coaches, first of all, our coaches are going to be knowledgeable, compassionate, and equitable among the athletes. The student athletes are going to be competitors. They're going to be students of the game, and they're going to want to be a Blue Devil, and it's going to be about team. It's not going to be about their statistics or you know, their playing time, things like that. So I want to be honest with everybody, but our student athletes should be ready to compete, you know, at the highest of levels, and you know, be a team player first, work hard, and study film, and be knowledgeable about your sport and know the game inside and out.
And there are so many different ways and obviously opportunities to do that. And that's always the balance in athletics, is obviously what opportunities have you had to, you know, play or be involved in a sport. And you know, sports like football and basketball and baseball and softball and soccer, they have a lot of AAU programs and other things that exist, obviously, and help develop student athletes perhaps before they get to their high school experience. And then for other high school athletes, it's their first experience as a sport like field hockey, not necessarily one particularly in this part of Massachusetts that student athletes pick up in their earlier days. You know, so there are other sports that you, of course, interact with and first experience when you get to the high school level. And of course, that leads to varying stages of development. And then you have athletes who maybe never get an opportunity to be involved with athletics until they get to the Leominster High School athletic program. Talk about the importance, obviously, of athletics being, as you mentioned, equitable and open to anyone. You welcome any and all comers in any sport that is willing to participate.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to implement, we just got middle school field hockey last year. I mean, most of our league, Midwatch A, has middle school athletics. So, you know, and there's a number of opportunities for kids to play AU basketball and different programs leading up to the high school. But, I think it's of the utmost importance for kids to get involved in something. I mean, we have a lot of great opportunities at the high school. We're trying to get these programs introduced at a competitive level at a younger age, because Todd, it's really difficult and to kind of express this, it's hard. I want everybody to try out for a sport in high school, but it's real difficult to just start trying to play softball or baseball as a freshman in high school. I mean, obviously, you need to be playing that as a younger student athlete to be able to have some success at it in other sports. So, I think we have a lot of programs in our city that kids can get involved in. I'm trying to implement more middle school programs. We've had a lot of talk about middle school football amongst athletic directors, and we can touch upon that later, if you will, with the reasoning behind that. But hopefully we can instill these programs, particularly field hockey. I know it's been a great success last year, and continue to kind of look at different ways to make us have successful programs at the high school. I mean, that's my job. That's what I look to do, obviously. And, you look at our soccer season we had last year with Coach McCaughey, and our basketball season with Coach Grutfield, and that gym and Doyle Field and the playoffs in soccer. I mean, there are no better, more passionate, crazy good fans than Leominster Blue Devil fans. I mean, I loved watching those playoff games, and anybody that was at that game at the high school, the playoff game against Shrewsbury, could attest that there's never been a louder gymnasium that I've ever seen or been a part of at a high school sporting event than that night when we beat Shrewsbury in basketball. So we're looking to create that environment in all of our sports. I think we've been in a lull the past few years, but we're really getting excited to get going and build some championships at the high school.
I think it's an opportunity. You mentioned this middle school idea of being able to develop more and more sports. You mentioned the possibility of middle school football somewhere along the way. I have to imagine that the considerations for putting middle school football in are about teaching and better preparing tackle football players technique-wise before they arrive at the high school level, where kids are bigger, stronger, and moving faster, and hoping that will curtail some of these injuries and some of the black eyes the sport of football has been taking.
Well, we want to talk to AYF because I did mention it in passing to them. I guess we were thinking about it, and the reasoning is really about participation rates. Mm-hmm. So, currently we have a varsity program, a JV1 program, and then a JV2 program, which is in the past your freshman football program. Well, we see a lot of different schools, not mostly Mid-Watch A, but now it's starting to hurt Mid-Watch A schools. Wachusett, Algonquin, Shrewsbury, Leominster, all of those schools, we see the numbers beginning to drop. So if we can get a handle on that and eliminate your JV2 program and just have a JV1 program, and this is in its infant stage, so you would have a middle school football program where kids would start in August, not July 1st, after school program, grades 7 and 8 only. And then we just have a JV1 program. We have freshmen and sophomores playing in that schedule. And then you'd have a middle school and varsity. So we're just thinking about that only from a numbers standpoint, not necessarily a coaching standpoint, just because the numbers with the press of the concussions and different things over the years, we've seen numbers drop, and we're Mid-Watch A schools. I mean, these schools from Air Shirley and Groton and Tingsboro, they're seeing their numbers go down. So they're looking for a way, I guess you could say, to teach technique and the practices after school, and the parents, it's just like an after school program. I mean, that would fit well with a lot of parents, I think. But, we're not out to eliminate our AYF program or infringe on the great job they've done. I think it'll be a discussion that we look at our whole program, our entire program at Leominster High School, and the kids that play in our Leominster programs, what's going to be best for them. Because I can tell you this, if you're a freshman football player at Leominster High School and you're only going to be able to play 4 or 5 games because there's no one else to play, I mean, that's not going to do anybody any good. Or play two teams twice and things like that. That's kind of what the road we've been going down the past few years, doubling up with schools, playing them twice. So, we're looking at all things, but we want to make our intent is to kind of get as many people playing football as we can, and be safe, and create great high school programs so they can play at the high school level.
And certainly you do point to those numbers. As I always say, when I'm tracking numbers, I look at, of course, how long my running roster cards are, and for schools, as you mentioned, like Leominster and Algonquin and Shrewsbury, and these mid-watch A schools, Wachusett as well. It used to take an 8.5 by 14 piece of paper on one side lengthwise in order to fit all of the varsity athletes in that sport of football. And now, more and more and more, we're getting cut down to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That means you've lost 3 inches worth of names somewhere along the way, which just is a crude but pointed example of, there are just less players competing, especially competing all the way through their high school career to a varsity level athletic program like football.
Yeah, sure. And then, we're looking to do something about that. And, that's just one thing that's been thrown out there. I know Wachusett has middle school football right now, and a few other schools. But again, I'd love to sit down with AYF and just kind of look at the model and how we're going to roll it out and things like that, and just see how it works out.
Creativity is the name of the game at this point in time. And when we talk about creativity in your job as athletic director in Leominster, you have to point to creativity of field usage. Field usage is one of those things that a lot of towns that have to talk about, because there's only so much field space, gym space, and appropriate places to conduct a high-level athletic program. And in Leominster, of course, Doyle Field is the gem of central Massachusetts as far as a playing facility goes. But when you get beyond that, there are not a lot of spaces. It was raised by other athletic directors who we've talked about in this program, that Leominster's track program has been a road team now for many decades, because there's just not a sufficient track available to them to be able to compete. And of course, the hope has always been, and every time I walk in your office, I know you look at it every single day because it's on the board in front of you. There's that schematic design of what the turf field and full-on track and other fields that could be built, that could exist behind the school in Leominster. And it's been a number of false starts for a number of years, but I know it's something you badly want to see come to fruition. Like I said, you stare at it every day. What's the status of that? I get asked about that quite often. What's the status of a potential field project somewhere down the road?
Well, I did speak to the mayor today. They have in the past, I think it was early February, they were drilling in the back, and they're going in front of the conservation department and permits, getting ready for permits. But we're trying to move forward. I know it's been so long, but the drawing does look beautiful. But I want to see some digging back there, and I think a lot of people from the city. I mean, again, I can't say I can't say enough about Doyle Field. I mean, that place is beautiful, but we don't have a track. We don't have our own track program or a mid-watch A school. Just a number of things that I think we've tried to work at over the years. Just practice alone for the kids to be able to walk out the back of the school. If they have a 4 o'clock practice, they can go for extra help. They can lift. They can watch film. Now they can't do that. They got to get on a bus and they got to go to Samoset, or they got to go to, Fallbrook or Doyle Field or Skyview, so that they're all over the map. And it's been, it creates a number of obstacles as an athletic department, getting an athletic trainer. I mean, where are they going to go? There's 5 different places. So, all of those things I've been working on, trying to get a trainer, trying to get a field, just to help. I mean, again, our kids have been great. I mean, to be able to adjust to playing without their home field or home practice field in the back, it has been, it hasn't, I mean, I can't say enough about those kids just getting on buses every day, but to look at that field, it's going to be beautiful. 2 turf fields, a track in the upper field. We're just going to have a number of options. And, I foresee the big varsity games still remaining, Friday night lights, Thursday night, Tuesday night, playing night games at Doyle Field for the varsity teams. But, it's going to open up a lot of avenues for our teams. And, it's going to be a huge moment for Leominster High School. And and a prideful moment when we can see those fields back then. A softball field is going to be overlaid on the top of the lower turf field. So it's going to serve every sport in the fall and the spring that use turf fields. It's going to be great. I'm very excited, and hopefully we get that thing in as soon as possible.
I love the idea of a turf softball field, Coach. The purists cringe quite significantly when you talk about it, but having worked on turf softball fields, it's a phenomenal way to play the game, and of course, it makes it most flexible. You don't lose games when you have a turf field, and for an athletic department, it can also be a piece of a fundraising option, as other schools who aren't as fortunate might have to come and rent the facility. So it serves a multitude of purposes when you can have that turf field. And I think things like you pointed to moments ago, something like an athletic trainer, to the uninitiated, the people that aren't there every day, people who aren't involved in athletics, they go, well, that sounds like a luxury. But in reality, the need for an athletic trainer is so important in today's athletic world, because student athletes, as far as bodies go, if they're not well taken care of, break down at a much earlier age than we were seeing maybe 2, 3, and 4 decades ago.
Yeah, and a lot of schools do have trainers. Some of them don't, obviously, but that's just one of my goals. And I think if you look at it, I mean, in the spring, if we had an athletic trainer, where would they go? They'd jump around from field to field, or they'd tape after school. So we could still do it and work within that paradigm. But I think getting the field and moving forward and getting things in place, having an athletic trainer will be great for our program, for all of our programs, having that field back there, and just a number of options that we're going to have.
I will tell you, you'll be hearing from lacrosse coach Colin Davis. We made a deal right here on this very broadcast. More night games equals more coverage as well. That was the deal we struck right here on this broadcast just about a week or so ago. Coach, as we kind of turn our attention to the state of athletics more broadly across the state this year, not just obviously the pandemic, which is what we're dealing with right now, but this year, this 2019-2020 school year and athletic year has brought about so many experiences that have, I think, exposed maybe some of the warts of athletics more broadly, and has forced a lot of adaptation. I mean, you go back to last summer, some coaches had pointed out to me, obviously you had the hot days, which affected the ability to do a lot of the preseason training that traditionally happens at the tail end of summer going into the beginning of the school year. You had the Triple E epidemic that, of course, affected every fall sport. It forced kids out of class earlier to be able to go to competitions. Some schools didn't want to play on weekends. Others did want to play on weekends. It made things very, very difficult. I know from an athletic department, just managing it all, of course, is a difficult piece. But I think it really did, kind of force people into maybe a new way of thinking about athletics, and they're going to have to force some creative ideals going forward. As you kind of look at the landscape of what we've seen this year, what is your kind of the state of athletics, high school athletics in Massachusetts at this point in time?
Yeah, there's just a lot of things. I mean, I had to order the wet ball, which talks about when kids can go out and practice, and there's certain times that the readings, a lot different workouts that can happen, and the West Nile virus, things like that. I mean, changing games. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, but again, all the athletic directors, we want to do what's best for the kids and try to make it a great experience. But it is a lot of different things you have to deal with aside from weather, and now you have mosquitoes that go into different districts, and they have different rules, and they can't play a game beyond 6 p.m. and other teams can't even play. So you really, thank goodness we work together so well, and we're very understanding. But it is difficult when you're in different. We're more in the north, and you get into the Southern Worcester County League, or you go to Shepherd Hill. They're in a whole different ball game. I mean, you're passing Mosquito Pond to get to the high school field at Shepherd Hill, and that's the truth. And we went up there, and it was raining that night, but he had told me we're not going to be able to play past 6, and it is what it is. I guess you just again, you just got to adapt, and we're great at adapting and trying to do what's best for the kids and move forward.
At times, I think when people look at, and I've been using this comparison with athletic directors and coaches, when people look at the MIAA broadly, as a governing body, they see a legislative body. They see Congress, they see the Parliament, they see people who are getting sent as representatives in athletic directors who are always going to choose, in their theory, the greater good. I think what they've sometimes missed is that it's more like the United Nations. You have a bunch of individual school districts that do send representatives to this united body, but they all are coming with their own self-interested needs that each of their districts and then each of their leagues and so on down the line have to deal with. How do you balance those things as Leominster's representative when you are dealing with your league and the MIAA more broadly?
Well, it's tough. I mean, I speak to my coaches, and obviously I went to the high school, Leominster High. So, I think districts is important. I think you're alluding more to moving forward into the discussion about the state playoff, system that they're going to implement. And you have a lot of coaches from Western Mass and Central Mass. I mean, we're different regions, obviously, than Boston. And we love the district finals. We love the camaraderie. We love the rivalries, Leominster, Fitchburg, Wachusett, Shrewsbury, Algonquin. I mean, the list is endless. And, I think all of us athletic directors in Central Mass, we hold that quite close to our value system, and creating a district final, creating that Central Mass vibe, and keeping that piece alive in this whole thing. So it does get difficult because from some respect, you want a state champion. You want to know you were the #1 team in the state. Many other states have it. We joked about, all the coaches say, well, you're going to have a team from Lee have to travel to Martha's Vineyard to play an opening round game. And I think one of the athletic directors said, well, what if you live in Texas? It's a bigger state. So, to your point, you have a lot of different angles to the discussion and the rivalries. And then you talk about money and who's going to go to the game. So there's a lot of moving parts, but you're right. You hit the nail on the head. It does seem, a bit frustrating at times because, you want to play within your own district, but you also want a state playoff. Is it going to be equitable? What division are we going to be in? How are they going to assign different schools to different divisions when it comes to state playoffs and sports? And a lot of complexities that need to be worked out. But, you're right. It's tough to balance, my competitive nature. I want to be #1 in the state, and I want to compete against Boston teams. But I don't want to have us with 1,800 kids in our school, and 1/3 of them are in a trade, and they're counting us as 2,000 kids and putting us in a division with schools that don't have that. And that's just speaking statistically. When you look at a trade school, you don't get the amount of participants as you would from the regular high school. Those are just the facts. And when they're looking at enrollment numbers, for example, if you're a trade school or a school that has trade, then you're going to drop 2 divisions when it comes to your enrollment. So we have 1/3 of our population. So that's one of the things I want to ask is, how are they going to count our enrollment? So you have so many different variables, Todd, but I think that's why a lot of my coaches are very concerned about, this whole state playoff system, and do we want it, because there's so many unknowns. It's like buying a car, and you don't know, if it has sync, or you can play your iPod in there, or your phone links up to it. You don't know, so it's hard to make a decision.
I was struck by what you just said about enrollment, because this was one of the things at one of the Central Mass meetings that I attended when they were explaining some of the things that they're considering at the state level. And one of them is re-leveling, enrollment, but instead of it being enrollment based on gender, which has traditionally been the split, is that from now on they are considering in the next couple of years as they move toward this statewide tournament that enrollment would actually just be total enrollment. There would no longer be consideration for gender. It's just you have 2,000 kids, period. It's not you have 500 boys and this many girls and we're going to make multiple. They're going to pick a number, and that number is whatever your total enrollment is, regardless of gender. As one had said, it's perhaps in some ways becoming more and more difficult to distinguish into those categories. So they're saying it's just easier to say we have X students, and that's how many, students that Leominster will be, tabulated against. How will that affect athletics, and how do you think it will affect Leominster athletics to be tabulated by a total number, period?
I mean, that's just a concern of mine, because just from coaching football, I've noticed, our tech program is well beyond. I mean, our tech program is so tremendous now. These kids, they have internships, they have, and they're just so committed. Dan Bayshon, he's terrific. I mean, we're trying to get kids to participate in athletics from our CTI program, which they currently do. But from my perspective, if you're going to run a state playoff system, and then you're going to take technical schools and take their enrollment and say they have 1,000 students and they're in Division 5, and because they're a technical school, they go to Division 7. Well, why wouldn't they consider a third of my population? A third of our population, roughly 1,800. We have 1,800 kids, and about a little beyond 600 kids go to CTI program. I think it's 7 something. It's actually a little more than a third. So how do they count? And this is only, Todd, I'm only talking about participation. What's the percent of a technical ed student that participates in athletics? Well, it's a lot lower than your general education population, just because they're doing things after school more so, and they're working towards a career. So it's a lot different, and the numbers are lower. So I'm only going off of what the state has used for a multiplier, so to speak. So those are a lot of things that I may look at the state and kind of file an appeal on some of these divisions that were put in for these different sports. And I think that's mostly where my coaches were concerned. Well, what division are we going to be in? Are we going to be in Division I hockey and play Division I schools in Eastern Mass? I mean, I'm all about competition, but let's be honest. I want it to be equitable. I want our school to be able to compete. I want us to fall in the division where I feel is competitive for all our student athletes and all of our athletic programs, because if you're not competitive, the numbers drop, and then the program, you don't have a program. So I think you're right, with the confusion of this whole state playoff system, and, not everybody's going to be happy. I just want it to be fair, for Leominster High School.
I was very struck in talking with both Coach Devin Gates and Coach Colin Davis about this kind of statewide playoff system and where kind of Leominster, thinking was. The thing that I think stood out to me the most was they were one of the first places and first set of coaches that I heard saying good things about this Max Preps system, which I always kind of caveat by saying Max Preps was coming regardless of whether this new statewide system was selected. That was a decision that got made before the statewide system came into being. So the Max Prep system was going to be kind of the new management system, or the new ranking system that was going to be used, whether it was sectionals and then into crossover and then into a statewide final, or we go to one 32-team statewide bracket. Max Preps was going to be the ranking system, but both Colin Davis and Devin Gates said great things about Max Preps. They thought it was going to be a great field leveler when it comes to treating everybody equitably as far as where they fit in the overall picture of their division in this sport.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, the algorithm that they use for a game, the best example I can give, my first or second year in football, we scrimmaged, I think it was Natick. We scrimmaged Natick, and it was my first year, maybe my second year. We went back and forth with them, touchdown after touchdown. I think we both scored 4 or 5. They won and we won. One of those scrimmages. And at the end of the year, I think we were ranked 10th in the state, and they were 11th. And that's at the end of the year. So the algorithm that Max Preps uses, who your opponent plays, whether it's home or away, how many wins your opponent had, who were they against, and I'm sure you could figure out on and how it goes. So that is fair. But an example that I'll give, and this is, I think, a good example. So Fitchburg baseball program, for a while they were struggling. Ray Kazenda started coaching, and how athletic directors work in Central Mass, we said, you know what? Your program's not Division I material right now, but your enrollment says that you are. But because you're trying to rebuild your program, we're going to give you a little bit of a reprieve, and we'll drop you down 2 divisions so you can get your program. And sure enough, Fitchburg got a little better, but when they went to the playoffs, they had to play in Division I, and they got beat. They got beat pretty badly, but the whole point was that you're trying to save the Fitchburg High School baseball program by giving them a little reprieve so they can at least be competitive. Because if you're not competitive and you're not winning games, kids aren't going to play. They're not going to try out for your team. So that's what I'm concerned about. Once we're in the state tournament, we're going to be in our own division, and I guess we still have that flexibility to play teams that are lower division than us or not as good as our program to kind of hold on to that. But if we go to the playoffs, which if you win 50% of your games, then you're going to be in the division that the state puts you in. You see what I'm saying? So, you could be in a Division I program for football, and then you play a Division II team or whatnot. But when you go to the playoffs, you're going to be one. So I just want to see where we fall for all of our sports, because some of our sports programs are different. I know our tennis programs are different. Our lacrosse programs are different, than our Midwatch A programs. Our boys and girls hockey teams are different. So there's a lot of different variables that working, some for us, some against us, but those got to be measured out, and hopefully, the state, the MIAA, accepts some of the, the appeals that I may or may not put in.
I think one of the things that stood out to me as far as options went with this statewide playoff was 2 choices that you as athletic directors and school districts were faced with. You were faced with either accepting this new idea, which maybe could inject a lot of excitement and maybe really bring people back to athletics, or accept more of the east to central, central to west shift, which Leominster was, of course, victimized by not a handful of years ago when the shifting began in basketball and Leominster got slotted out west. And we're playing, Leominster and Shepherd Hill were the 2 notables from Central Mass that were considered Western Mass schools, and they would drive by multiple playoff games on their way to go play in a playoff system that the system didn't know what to do with them. They just didn't fit. How did their schedule rank against Western Mass schools? The system didn't really seem to function. So in my mind, if you were to then take that and as an option, more of that, more Eastern Mass schools coming to Central and more Central Mass schools getting shifted west, against the option of the new tournament, that everybody's going to be rated statewide with a max prep system, and there's going to be some form of equity, it seemed to me to be a no-brainer to choose, well, I'll go with the new system, because the system that everyone wants to cling to, that sectional system or that district system that we've called it for years, it's gone. You're not going to get a Leominster-Fitchburg final because they don't play even in the same division any longer. Like those things they don't exist anymore. So let's try the new system and see if everybody ends up finding each other in the end, and maybe you end up liking it. Did you feel like you were balancing options here, and maybe this was the best of some of the worst choices?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea, and I spoke with all my coaches. The only concern I think a lot of athletic directors had. So, for example, Max Preps is going to rank the top 32 teams. They have a breakdown of how many actual teams there are per sport and how many will qualify. If you win 50% of your games, you're automatically going to qualify. They kept that in there. So more teams are actually going to qualify for the playoffs than would have previously under the other system, believe it or not, with this system that they're creating. However, as you get into the playoffs, the big concern was the area and who's playing who. And the sectional, I guess if you want to cut to the chase, Todd, Boston schools would have to win 4 or 5 games to get to the state title or the state semis, and a Western and Central Mass, they may only have had to win 3. So why should a Boston school have to win 5? They end up beating the second best team in the state, and then they got to go out and they slaughter a Central Mass or a Western Mass team. I mean, that was their thinking. So they wanted to level the playing field. The only problem with that is, for example, okay, Leominster, and part of me gets excited about this because I'm a positive person, but the other part is a realistic point of view. Like, okay, our soccer program, we're ranked 6th in the state, and we get a first round bye, and then the second game, the so-and-so team from South Boston comes to Leominster. They don't bring a lot of fans. There's no rivalry there. We have a ton of fans. Or flip the script on that one. Let's say our soccer team qualifies for the playoffs, and we got to drive to South Boston to play, or any team, play Cambridge, Rindge, and Latin. How many fans are we going to have at that game, as opposed to if that game was at Wachusett or Shrewsbury or Worcester South? So the concern was that the fan base, the excitement about the game, all of those things, and travel, and how much it's going to cost, and fan buses. And I think those are the major concern. But, in the end, you don't know until you let it play out. So we could play Wachusett in a final, in a state semifinal in soccer. I mean, that could have happened this year. St. John's, we could have played them by the rating system. So, there's a lot of variables. I mean, they're just jumping into it, and, we'll see how it works out. I know, our coaches are more from a sectional point of view, but I will say this, all of us athletic directors have vowed to have, so if we have, say, for example, 20 basketball games, we're going to try to put in there like a Clark tournament. Instead, we'll have a mid-watch basketball tournament. We'll have a baseball playoff, leading up to a Central Mass champion type of competition, games that count, that would contribute to the ranking for max preps. So we cut our seasons a little short, and we have a Central Mass playoff game. And then if Leominster is the Central Mass champ in soccer and we beat Wachusett, now we go into the state tournament, and Leominster's ranked 4th and Wachusett's ranked 11th. And what do you know? We're playing for the state title. That could happen. So that's kind of what we're thinking, because I think we're a special kind of breed in Central Mass. And I'll say this, we have Midwatch A, B, all of our Midwatch schools, we have strong leagues. We're very competitive in a lot of sports. And I think we'll do very well across the state in many of our sports, because we do have a strong league. So that's going to work in our favor. But, I could tell you that Central Mass athletic directors, they heard our coaches speak. We want to maintain somehow, way, shape, or form that Central Mass district title, put a banner in your gymnasium, you are the district champ. I think that's loud and clear what every coach that I've heard from and every athletic director wants to try to maintain.
And that could certainly sound a lot like, to me, some form of, if we were to use the college terminology, conference tournament is very much what it sounds like somewhere along the way. I've been trying to master the term regional tournament champion as well, because that would be more akin to what we call today a sectional tournament champion, right, or a district champion today as well, which is a possibility, I know, when we start talking about a statewide tournament as well. Coach, I've been playing this game a little bit with the folks that I've been interviewing. Any sport hypotheticals here? I think you've kind of given it to me, but here, I'm going to throw the hypothetical at you. So does the prospect of Leominster versus Danvers, Leominster Plymouth North, Leominster Hyannis excite you in any way, shape, or form the way Leominster Wachusett, Leominster Neshoba, and Leominster St. John's does?
No.
I've been enjoying the real short answers, because it's been a lot of fun here.
I mean, you can ask St. John's, Fitchburg. I mean, all the rivalries, Wachusett. I mean, that's what makes sports so great. I got to tell you this story, and this is just off the cuff. but I during this pandemic, I've been, getting my groceries, picking them up, not going into stores, and I did, wearing a mask and things. And at 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, we get whipped cream, and always in Hannaford's when I was with my daughters, we look and there's a red thing of whipped cream and a blue one,
Yep.
and I always pick the blue one. Okay, always, 100% of the time. You know this. Okay, so the last time I went shopping, I think it was March 13th when this whole thing was starting. There were only red whipped cream containers in the cabinet, in the fridge. Okay. So I'm saying to myself, I wonder, and I can almost guarantee you, if you go to Fitchburg, there will be all blue whipped cream cans in the fridge because they pick all the red ones. So that's the beauty of rivalries. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. And I hope there's someone out there, that employees or whatever at both Hannaford's, one in Fitchburg, one in Leominster. I want you to go count your whipped cream cans, and I want you to tell me how many red you have and how many blue you have. And I can guarantee you there's going to be more red in Leominster and more blue in Fitchburg. And that's the rivalry. That's what it's all about. It's ingrained in us.
Some way and somehow you've been raised not to like red somewhere along the way. I love it, Coach. All right, last question here before I let you go. If one day I could give you one day, week, month, even year, okay, of grand poobah status in athletics, and you could do what you believed was absolutely essentially best for statewide athletics at any point in time, what are the priorities? What are the things that you think need to be fixed, could be addressed, and just need to cut the chase of all the democracy, just get to the point? We need to do this because it's the right thing for athletics.
You mean from a tournament perspective, or as we sit now in this pandemic? Is it just more or less?
I would say broadly outside of this pandemic, anywhere, anytime. What does athletics need?
I just, I think we need to balance the competition and make sure that, try to work with the kids as far as what they're doing in school and moving forward, and just advocating for our kids. I think it's a tough question because we do a lot of these things, but it just, it seems sometimes, I think a lot of the waivers, I guess, filing with the state when you don't have enough kids for your team, the physicals that you got to get in, or problems with doctors. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do have to comply with. But I would think some of those logistical things that I think the MIA is pretty good at, but getting waivers and when you don't have enough players and working with different schools and bringing up middle school kids, I think that would help a little bit, and just trying to work with, a lot of these other AAU programs. I think that's probably the most thing that kind of concerns me the most with high school athletics. And I think AAU programs and club sports teams, they're great for these kids, but I also think they have a huge effect on our high school programs. So I'd like to kind of see something worked out with those club teams and AAU programs and all these tryouts that these kids go to, and try to work something out where high school athletics is supported and promoted by everyone, because it's your kids you're going to school with, the memories that you're creating for yourselves, and to play for your own school, and not necessarily not play and then go to an AAU program, which I do understand the parents. So it's kind of a fine line, but it is a different dynamic when you're playing on an AAU program with 10 of the best athletes from different towns, and then you get to your own team, and guess what? You have sophomores and juniors who are doing the best they can, and it's not all about winning. It's all about being a good teammate and playing the game the right way, and just trying to balance that, Todd. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles that I think all of us have as athletic directors, is trying to, keep the student athletes and the parents focused on the experience of playing high school athletics. It's a lot different than something that, outside of the school. And I think I got to commend a lot of my parents this year and the student athletes. I think we're getting there. I think, we're taking for what it is. We want to be competitive, but we also want to create a great environment for these student athletes to look back and say, I was a Blue Devil. Remember the year we struggled, but we upset the #1 team, or remember the year we won the state title, or, all of those things that I want to create. I mean, that would be my #1 thing, to try to work a path where these kids not only playing AAU and club sports, but really idolize playing for your high school team.
Remember the year we won in penalty kicks to move on. It's a great story from this year, Coach, and one of many positives to focus in on in what has been a difficult year, to say the least. Leominster High School Athletic Director Dave Palazzi, we thank you so much for joining us here on Press Row. I know you have a very important dance-off to choreograph for and ultimately compete in later on tonight. What are the keys? What's the key to victory in a dance-off?
Well, you got to be free. I mean, my wife's a good choreographer, but my 2 daughters have been practicing all day. So, my youngest daughter said that, don't worry about it. It's not about winning. And my wife said, yeah, because she knows she's going to win because we haven't had time to practice. So anyway, but things are changing, and you just got to be positive, man. You got to do the little things that you couldn't do before that you always wanted to do, Have a dance contest with your daughters. That's where I'm off to.
And why the heck not? Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And we thank all of you so much for joining us here on Rivalry Family Media's Press Row. Like, subscribe, and follow all the information right there on your screen. And we will be with you in the coming weeks and months here on Press Row. For Leominster High School Athletic Director Dave Palazzi, I am Todd Robbins, saying thank you so very much for joining us. And until next time, so long, everybody.